Okay, in this video we are doing reverse array in place. I'm going to show you a few different ways that you might approach solving this. The first being the easiest, which is array.reverse, which is an array method to just simply reverse the order in an array, just like that. But doing that, you're not really stretching your programming muscles. And so I want to give you some nuggets of truth here that you could take with you and use for problem solving. And the first one up is a for loop, and we're going to be using a state variable here, which is kind of an important concept in programming. And let's begin with I equals 0. I is less than array.length, I++. And we're going to look at a few things here. Let's just set up the array value. So accessing the first element in the array, we want to then say that the first element is the last element. And we want to then access the last element and say that it's the first element. We want to do the same thing with the second element, say it's the second to last element. And we want to look at the second to last element and say that it's the second element, and then meet in the middle. So let's call this one start. And you'll see that it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just like this order. And then we're going to look at the last element and count, kind of go backwards. So we're going to just call that the end. And so from the end, we're going to say array.length minus 1 minus I. So we'll just put parentheses around that. And we run that and we see it says 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So why is this happening? Well, we're saying array.length, which is 5, minus 1, which is 4. Array.length is using natural number. So if we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that would be correct. But if we wanted to access the value in an array, we're actually using whole numbers to do that. So it'd be 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is not going to work if you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and to access the element in an array, it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then if you did 5, it would essentially be 6, but we don't have a 6 here, so it would be undefined, which is what you're going to find right here. See how the first one is undefined? Now when you say -1, so we're saying array.length, which is 5, minus 1 is 4, we're going 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we have it, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I is incrementing, right? So 5 minus 1 is 4, so 4 minus 0 is is 4. So the next iteration is 1, so it's 4 minus 1, which is 3, so that's 0, 1, 2, and 3. And that's why we have 4 there, and so on. So we need to make these two kind of work together to manipulate the data in the array without creating a new array. And we're doing that by dynamically assigning the values in the array. Alright, so let's create a temp variable. This is a snapshot. This is what makes it all work. We're going to say array at I, which is the starting value in the array. And then we're going to dynamically go to the starting value in the array, and we're going to say that the starting value in the array is the last value in the array. And we're going to say that the last value in the array equals the temp. And the reason why we can't say it's this value is because we're already reassigning that value to say it's the last element. So if we did this, well, let's just return how it is now, array. We need to half this, because if you don't half it, you're doing a 360 rather than a 180. Watch, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There it is. All right. Let me just show you why that is. See how we go 5, 4, 3 at the end? And we do 1, 2, 3. But if we go like whole, it's just going to keep going. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and vice versa. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that's why we have to half it, because we're unwinding what we're doing. So we want to do a 180 instead of 360. Okay, so back to this. When we run this, we get what we're looking for, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But if we were to just do this, it would just be this whole muckety-muck, because we're saying that array at the beginning here is the end. Now we're saying the end equals array at the beginning, but we're saying the array at the beginning is the end, so that's why it's like 5, 4, 3, and then 4 and 5. So it doesn't, because it's dynamic. This value is dynamically being assigned. So that's why we take a snapshot, and we call it a state variable, but I call it like a snapshot. And that snapshot is held in memory, which allows us to make this whole thing possible. Okay? And so therein lies the for loop conundrum, which is a pretty cool thing with using state variables and helping to understand how that works. Now, the next one is map, which is an ES6 array method that returns a new array. And so we're manipulating the data, but we're outputting a new array here. So we're going to say for every element in this array as num, let's do this logic. Let's access the element in the array, and we'll say array.length minus the number. So the array.length is 5, and 5 minus 1 is 4. 5 minus 2 is 3. Right? So 5 minus 1 is 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 minus 2 is 3. 0, 1, 2, and 3, and so on. Gives us the result of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now that's what I did in yesterday's video, except that what if you had an array like this one? Which is basically a string. You still want to be able to reverse it, but what you get is just a bunch of undefined, so it doesn't work out so well. Which is why, to make it a better situation, we're going to want to use the index. Index is kind of a default parameter that is exposed and allows you to do that counting. So we would just do index instead. Now the problem here is the index begins with whole numbers, so it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Array.length is 5, so 5 minus 0 would be 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there would be a need for a 6th element, right? But there would still always be this trailing undefined. So to get around that problem, we would just do index plus 1. So the first element in the index is 0, so 1 plus 0 is 1. So array.length 5 minus 1 is 4, which would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And that makes it all good. And so you don't need like the curly brackets here, because we're just using one line of code and it just automatically returns. But if you're going to use multi lines of code here with a map, you'd want to use the return keyword. If you're going to use the return keyword, you'd want to use squiggly brackets. So you would just kind of do it like that. And so an example of why we might use that is, let's say if we just do console.log index for see that, right? Yabba yabba doo. Oh man, I hate when I get tripped up like this. Why is it doing that, man? Okay, so we need to close out the parentheses there. There it is. All right, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's why we need the plus here, because it starts at 0. All right. Anyway, so I don't want to beat it to death. You basically just keep it one line of code. Don't need the return keyword. Don't need the curly brackets. All right, so the next one is an ES6 method called reduce it's just available for arrays. So we just return array.reduce, and array.reduce uses an accumulator, and it uses like a current number. So we'll just call it num. And just quickly, just to kind of show what this does that's a little bit different and special, is that you typically have a default value that you set for the accumulator. So with each iteration, we're looking at the current value, and this is basically pointing to whatever default value you set here, and you can accumulate it or you could just overwrite it. And so we're going to do like the accumulator plus equals num, and you'll see that it returns the data type that you set here. In this case, it's a number, so it's 15. But it doesn't have to just be that. It could, right? Like if you don't accumulate it, for example, too, it'll just overwrite, like everything. That's why you get 5. But if you want it to accumulate, you have to kind of set it like that. But anyway, we're going to use it differently. We're going to just do an array instead. And we don't want to overwrite the array. We want to actually return a new array and append each, like value that you are returning. So to do that, we would want to use the spread operator, right? Because this is an array and we're accumulating, so we don't want to overwrite the array. We just want to append to it. So you use the spread operator for that, and it allows us to create like a new value that we're going to put into the array that we're ultimately returning here with reduce. And we're just going to use this same logic. Okay. But we're also going to access the default parameter called index, and that's going to allow us to just do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it'll work the same way. It's just getting a little bit fancier, but also understanding reduce at a slightly higher level than just using it as a counter, which is typically what you find in documentation, is just showing an example of just counting numbers. But reduce can, handle different data types in its accumulator. And as long as you're using the spread operator, you're able to actually append additional data to the array. And that's the story. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, take care.